Prime Minister has scored a big parliamentary win on its penultimate day, with the government repealing the refugee medevac laws. The fiery Senate showdown quickly igniting questions about whether the government struck a secret deal with Jackie Lambie.
An emotional Jackie Lambie seals the deal.
I'm more than satisfied that the conditions are now in place to allow medevac to be repealed.
The make-or-break crossbencher falling the government's way on the second last sitting day of the year.
Ayes 37, noes 35.
The contentious laws gave doctors a greater say in the medical transfer of refugees and have been the subject of year-long division and debate.
I'm pleased that she has enabled us to shut the door that Labor sought to prise open.
Since his election win, the Prime Minister pushed for its repeal, and when his Senate leader rose to his feet at the start of the day, it appeared the coalition had got their way.
We believe it's in the national interest for this legislation to come to a vote.
A Senate surprise and a sure sign the government had secured the support of the Tasmanian Independent.
What is the secret deal? A deal between the Morrison government and Senator Lambie.
But Minister Cormann insists
there is no secret deal.
Senator Lambie avoided the deal rhetoric, but suggested in reality an arrangement was made.
So I put to the government a proposal, and since then we have worked together really hard to advance that proposal. We've worked to an outcome I believe we both want.
Her opponents pointing to the Senator's suggestion on just Sunday that a deal was a requirement of repeal.
I have given the government a choice. It can either pick A or B.
Just 3 days later, Senator Lambie breaking down, saying she understands the frustration about the secrecy.
But when I say I can't discuss it publicly due to national security concerns, I am being 100% honest to you.
Who's lying, Minister Cormann? Are you lying or is Senator Lambie lying?
It's the deal that dare not speak its name.
The Prime Minister insists there's no quid pro quo.
The only undertaking we have given is to implement our policies.
Mr Morrison downplaying a potential New Zealand resettlement option for 150 refugees being on the table.
The government's policy is to ensure that we seek to resettle people who are in Nauru.
Around 180 asylum seekers have been transferred to Australia under these medevac powers that were passed against the government's wishes. The vast majority of those remain here in Australia, but for the nearly 450 asylum seekers who remain offshore, that pathway has now been closed.
On average, one person died in offshore detention for 5 months. That ended when the medevac bill was passed. We are desperately scared for what will happen next.
For the government, the repeal is a big legislative win after a messy final sitting fortnight. A political gift as it heads into the Christmas break.
And wish everyone a very Merry Christmas.
Trudy McIntosh, Sky News, Canberra.
Earlier I spoke with one of Labor's spokespeople in this area about, well, allegations from Labor there's a deal, the government denies it, so what proof is there?
I don't know if she didn't use the word deal, but she spoke of an arrangement. And what we're seeing here is something that clearly is a shift on the part of the government. Jackie Lambie, we all know, is a straight shooter. We all know how sincerely she spoke of her concern about the people affected by this legislation. It defies belief that nothing has been offered to her. No shift of policy, no other commitment. It just doesn't make sense, Tom.
The government says she was won over, and when she spoke about conditions, there's also the context where she mentioned conditions that they are different to when medevac was passed initially, that at that stage there are people saying people are not getting medical attention. 180 people have since been transferred and there are only 400 left on, or 460 on Nauru and Manus Island. So isn't that a case of changed conditions, not necessarily a condition on a deal?
Doesn't sound like any of the things Jackie was talking about last week or even on Sunday. It just doesn't make sense.
The government's argument here is the medevac laws in practice are meaning, for example, there are 20 people that could have been resettled in the US but chose to come to Australia instead on medevac laws, and the 180 in total that have been brought here as well are no longer getting treatment in hospital, many living out in the community, and that this is a means for people to try to get to Australia. I asked Andrew Giles about those figures being put forward by the government and if he's seeking a briefing on the situation.
No, I haven't sought a briefing on that group of people.
Would that be a good idea?
Well, I think it is something that I will look into, Tom. Yeah. Obviously, we've been focused on a more substantive issue today and thinking about what it means for a group of people who no doubt are feeling pretty traumatised right about now.